So just beginning at the beginning, aliveness, where does aliveness live? Does it live in your emotional body? Does it live in your connection with spirit? Does it live in the intellect? It doesn't live in any of those places. It can be fed and it can be experienced through those places. But, really the last time that we checked, to experience aliveness, you need a body. Need a body to experience aliveness. And for, if you have historically been resistant to the embodied path, I'm going to invite you to just stay curious and stay with us, and maybe some grace and some beauty will open up in ways that it hasn't before. Yes. Yeah, aliveness. I really believe that it's the answer. It's the answer to everything, that if we were to put aliveness at the center of our culture, we would heal individually and we would heal collectively. We would heal our environmental crisis, our humanitarian crisis, even our economic crisis. And so my intention as I weave through our time together is to kind of allow for you to put the pieces together for yourself and how that looks in your life. And, the thing is, it's like sometimes we're suffering. Sometimes we're suffering. When we're suffering, it's easy to go seeking for answers. But when we're not suffering, when, there's health and prosperity and good relationships, then it's like, why do I want to go for aliveness? Why would I go seeking to become more alive? Obviously, there's a certain level of it if life is working. And that would be besides the obvious. The obvious being vitality and joy and creativity and a great libido, right? To really be able to taste life. And then there is more, and then there is more. So that the obvious and the more is where I want to take us and have us explore. And, here's the thing with aliveness, to look at aliveness, we also get to look at death, and we also get to look at deadness. And we'll circle back to death, but I really want to talk about the deadness. And in my work, I've been working with female leaders for over 10 years now, very intimately. And so in my own journey, and I work with some men as well, but the primary focus is with women. But I really know that it applies to all of humanity. What I'm going to be sharing with you is what I've discovered as the silent killer. And you may already know this, but it's shame. Shame is really the silent killer. So we can't explore aliveness if we don't explore, or at least come face to face with shame. And what's amazing is, because I work with leading women, I get to see how high functioning we can be. I mean, I'm in awe of the human spirit, how high functioning we can be, how much we can get done, how many children we can have, how many schools we can start, how many businesses we can launch and sell, and churches and nonprofits. And we do all of this while dragging around a giant sack of shame and trauma. And maybe we've tended to it some, and maybe we've done some work. But I would say the majority of us are lugging around a giant sack of shame. And so that's, all of this function that we're doing, and all of the, not this function, but this function that we're doing, the high function, the service to contribution, the ways we're leading, is while dragging that around. So it begs to ask, what could we create if we're not dragging that around? What could be possible? Right? Because it's not just about creating the things that check off the list. It's actually about the way that we're going about creating it. So we may have checked off the list, which is even the high functioning people that I'm talking to you about. There is a depletion and an exhaustion and a lack of joy and ability to taste life that's there at the end of the day. And so really that's the aliveness that we want, the ability to taste life. And also, the place that we find ourselves in isn't just, come out of the sky, didn't just the condition of the world, our humanitarian crisis, our environmental crisis, our economic crisis did not just happen to us. We have been active participants, whether by our action or inaction, the whole time. And that is also informed by the sack of shame that we have been lugging around. And so we really, we get to look at this. And I want to share with you where my fascination or inquiry into this really began. So I was born and raised in Islamic Iran. I was born during the Islamic Revolution. And it was really common. It was common for me as a young girl to step out of my house, and if my hair covering fell off of my hair, to have a gun pointed in my face. That was not an uncommon experience for me. And also the first 8 years of my life were when Iran and Iraq were at war together. And so for my whole childhood, for the first 8 years of my life, I knew the sound of the sirens on the radio. The radio was always on in the background, and the sirens were yellow, orange, and red. And I knew the sounds. I knew what yellow sounded like, what orange, what red sounded like. And I knew that, the orange meant like it's getting closer, and the red meant the bomb is coming, like boom, boom, that's the bomb. Like the earth is going to shake, and maybe you're alive and maybe you're not. And maybe people are alive and maybe they're not. Because being at war in a third world country, in a small third world country with a neighboring country, is not the same as being in the West and then like we invade someplace. It's a very much part of the day-to-day reality. Like the windows could shatter, people could be gone. And I remember as a little girl, the bomb would hit and there would be this moment of like, am I still alive? Right? I would hold my breath. Am I still alive? And so here's all of this around uncertainty of whether we were going to get to live or die. And, at the beginning of this pandemic, or kind of in the beginning middle, I was feeling really resourced and I was really serving my community. And I was asking myself, how come I'm not shaken? And I realized that it's because it's not. Like for many of us in the West, this is the first time we have come face to face with this level of uncertainty around life and death. And it's not the first time for me. And so what I had learned and really refined over the many years has allowed me to be much more resourced. And so that's my hope here, is that it also becomes a resource for you as we continue to move through these times. So there's this whole piece around life and death and uncertainty and how do we follow aliveness. And as I'm growing up, there's also then this profound sea of oppression that I'm living in as a young girl. High oppression of female expression in a lot of the Islamic countries, but specifically at the time that I was growing up in Iran. And it's gotten a little bit better, but, to this day, the sound of a woman singing in Iran is illegal. It's illegal. It's illegal for a woman to be heard singing by men outside of her immediate family. Why, you ask? Okay, so the reason is because her voice is considered to be so seductive that it will seduce men into acts of evil. So the men can't be responsible, just silence the woman. And so this is pretty absurd, right? If you've never heard this before, it's going to sound like so illogical and so absurd, so fundamentalist. And so this is the place where I started to ask, anytime there's something so drastic and dramatic, we get to ask, where did this come from? Like, what is the fear underneath this? And so I started to ask, is it true? Is it true that these men would be seduced into acts of evil? Is it only the men in this part of the world that can be trusted with their desire? That if desire arises in them, that they are incapable of bringing consciousness to it? Is that true? Right? This was my inquiry. And so, no, it's actually not true. But the reason that it feels true is because there is so much shame around the desire. And the shame is the thing, the shame around desire is the thing that we've been handing down generation by generation, really through organized religion. And I'm not here to knock anyone's religion, but it is what it is, this shame that's been handed down. And so these men obviously don't trust themselves with desire. The men who made these laws and who enforce the laws and keep the laws. And then I looked and saw that actually I also didn't learn to trust my desire. I was taught to be ashamed of my desire. Here I was, a seeker and a lover of God and everything sacred and devotional. And so I certainly tried on Islam and I prayed and did all the things. And it just never felt just never felt like home, you know? And then when I came to the States, I even tried Christianity for a while. It was like, it just didn't feel like home, because there was this piece around desire where every time that I looked in these places where I wanted to find home with God, it just wasn't there. Couldn't find it there. So here's the thing that I learned about shame as I was studying. And I learned that shame dissolves at the edges. And so what does this mean? It means that the place that shame dissolves is like when you go to the very edge of the thing, the place where you feel like you will melt and you will die. That's the place where shame dissolves. And if you're thinking that you don't know where your shame is, or that you've worked a lot with your shame, I'll just tell you, the thread to pull on is that thing that will, fire off your unworthiness. Just pull on that thread. We all have it. It doesn't matter how much work we've done. It's like that place, the source of separation, the belief that is the original wound of how we separate from our divinity. That's the shame. Because shame says, I am wrong. I am wrong. And so my way of being is wrong. My desire is wrong. Like who I am is wrong. But these, it's just so intricate and personal. And so you get to pull on that thread for yourself. And as we wrap up tonight, I'll give you something, a way to go and share in your community and kind of create this healing for yourself. So I set on a path to shame, to heal. I was just looking at the chat for a second. Yes, I set on a path to heal the shame, because I felt so split. Gosh, I just did not feel free. I didn't feel free. I moved to the States, and here I was living in America, having all the freedoms that I'd seen in the movies, watching the movies with the convertibles and the girls in bathing suits in public. And here I was. This was my reality. I was finally in America. I was finally free. And guess what? I did not know how to be free, because it was just so internalized. And this is when I learned that freedom, although it's like the greatest of liberties, it is the hardest to learn how to use. And you may know this for yourself, because you may have lived in America your whole life and you may have never felt free, or you may have just started to feel free, or you may know this about other people, that it really is an inside job. So this is when I set out to dissolve the shame. And as I was doing my work and I was doing my study, I was guided, very much so guided, to go and become a stripper. Oh boy, I did not want to do that. My ego did not want to do that. I had been studying. I'd been studying with, closely, being mentored by some of the speakers that have been speaking on the stage today. This is years ago. It's almost 20 years ago. And I wanted to be a teacher. I did not want to be a stripper. So my ego was very challenged, and the guidance was very clear, that you will go and you will claim your freedom and you will send it back to your ancestors. And that just felt really potent. And so I could bring myself, I knew what guidance felt like. I could bring myself to follow this. And so I thought, all right, I will do it for a year. I'll do it for a year. Maybe I'll do it for a week, but I can do this for a year. I'm in my 20s, I can do this. And so I started working at this club in Arlington, Virginia, across from the US Pentagon, where I was stripping for the most powerful men in this country, the men who run this country and the world. And what happened is I ended up dancing for 6 years. And if you would have ever told me in the beginning that it was going to be 6 years, there was no way. I mean, I would have just walked away. I would have said, I'm not interested in liberating myself and my ancestors. I'm not doing it. So I would dance for a few months, and then I would go and study somewhere, get a certification, then I'd come back, and then I'd go live in an ashram, and then I would ask, like, can I be done? And it would say, no, you go back. And the reason it took that long is because that's how long it took for me to heal the shame. That's how long it took for me to be able to stand, in front of you and tell you that I loved stripping. I loved taking my clothes off and going into a state of ecstasy and allowing myself to be seen in that place, mostly naked, allowing myself to be in ecstasy and, have my back arched, and I look and there are men, sitting there like this, like they're praying. And looking in their eyes and seeing that they're turned on, that the desire is alive in them, and then not shaming them, and myself not being in shame around my erotic aliveness. And so being in this shared space of permission was so tremendously healing. And really, it's not so much about the stripping. I mean, that's just part of the story, right? It's like, I want to give you the medicine of it, the medicine of what it is when in our humanity, when we can share permission for our aliveness, for our full humanity, which we are mammals, we are primal beings. And there are keys here. There are keys here. There is so much wisdom. There's so much wisdom in the primal bodies, in the animal of our bodies, because that's actually the place that we are the closest to nature. It's really the closest that we are to nature. And the further we come away from the primal, the erotic, is the further we come from nature. Or, and in further, I mean, we could have our eroticism. It could just be under a dark cloud of shame, right? It could be in secrecy and in shame and in a lot of self-judgment. And so if that's where it lives, what we create in the world is not going to be something that supports the environment or supports life. It's not something that's life-giving. So we'll just leave this here for a minute, and then we'll come back. What I want to share with you is about the Inca prophecy, this ancient prophecy, and you may know about it. So the prophecy says that long ago, humanity would take two routes. They would go in two directions. And one would be the direction of the eagle representing the intellect, the mind, science, and industry. And the other part of humanity would be the path of the condor, and the condor representing the heart, passion, earth wisdom, and body wisdom, and that they would go far apart, and that in the 1400s they would come together and clash, and that the eagle people would be so powerful that they would almost fully dominate the condor people. And this is an indigenous prophecy. So when I feel into this, I really feel in it as the consciousness of the eagle and the consciousness of the condor. And we can see this in how we have almost fully destroyed our natural environment by the use of technology. So that's the overpowering of the eagle with the condor. And then the prophecy says that 500 years later, which was in the late 1900s, there would be an opportunity for, not a guarantee, but an opportunity for the eagle and the condor to come together and soar the skies together. And this is kind of at the beginning of when, in the New Age movement, there was a talk of the divine feminine and the rise of the feminine, because there was a knowing, right? And the rise of the feminine it's not about just the rise of the feminine, it's the unification, right? It's the unification of these two consciousnesses that we can experience our wholeness, And this wholeness doesn't live outside of us. It doesn't live, it's not just like the world. We're not just waiting for the world to experience this wholeness. Each of us has the opportunity to create this wholeness within ourselves. And how we do that is that we bring online the feminine consciousness, which is the wisdom of the erotic body. The wisdom of the erotic body is life-giving. The feminine is life-giving. The erotic body is life-giving. It's literally how we create each other, is the erotic body. It's how we create each other. And so to be able to unify our own consciousness and all the ways that we've been informed, and the places from where we create strategy for our lives, the place from where we create our 5-year plan and our 10-year plan and our retirement plan, how can that be married with the wisdom and intelligence of our erotic body? Because when that happens, then the unification of the eagle and the condor has happened within each of us. And then this is us creating the experience of wholeness. So I want to give you some practices that we can do together. We can do it together. So some activation. So let's see. Yeah, this is the piece that I call aliveness over agenda, right? That's That's the experience of unification, is that how can we lead from our aliveness over our ego's agenda, what we think is going to keep us safe, the way that we have learned to stay safe and protected and have enough, right? So how can we learn to lead from our aliveness? Yes. So let's go ahead, and if you can just come to a comfortable seated position, I'm going to invite you to have a tall spine. A tall spine, it's a good practice to have on a Saturday night. Ooh, and just closing the outer eyes, we're going to practice the activating breath, and then I'm going to give you the 5 activating sounds, and I'll tell you how to work with it now and then how you can take it into your life. So just closing the outer eyes together. Ooh, take one cleansing breath. And let's take a deep breath in through the nose together. And breathing out of the mouth, directed with force, like you're blowing the breath out. This is the activating breath. And what I mean by activating is that it brings the stagnant material in the body up so that you can work with it with your breath. So breathing in through the nose and directing the breath as you blow it out. Let's practice this like 4 more times together. Breathing in and breathing out together. Breathing in. All the way in, breathing out together. And just notice if your belly is hard, if you have that sort of 6-pack belly, go ahead and release it into a Buddha belly. It's really what you want is the Buddha belly. Deep breath in. And deep breath out. So this is the activating breath. That's just a powerful tool anytime you feel yourself triggered or in fear or in doubt or unworthiness or shame, any of those qualities. It's a powerful breath to bring you back to center and through knowing what it is that's being rattled. So now we're going to go through the 5 activating sounds. So the in-breath is the same. And the out-breath is going on the out-breath. We're going to make 5 different sounds. So we're going to go through 5 times, and I'm going to guide you through with your eyes closed. I'll tell you first, and then we'll go through it. So the first breath, it goes in through the nose, and it's a hum on the exhale. And the next breath is a deep breath in through the nose. And an ooh sound on the exhale, ooh. And the next breath, the breath in through the nose, is an ah on the exhale, ah. And the next breath in through the nose. The exhale is you stretch these neck muscles, ee. And the final breath in through the nose. On the exhale, you're going to put the tip of your tongue at the roof of your mouth behind your teeth, and you're going to make the sound. And so we're going to do this together. Let's go ahead and close our eyes, and I'll guide you through. I'm going to invite you, as we go through this, don't start without me, to just notice that there is a part of you that is doing the breathing and the vibrating. And I want you to attune to a part of yourself that's right underneath your skin. That is the part that is receiving the vibrations, that is being hummed and oohed and ahhed. So to have awareness of both of these parts. Breathing in together. Hum. 2 parts. Breathing in together. And again, breathing in together. Breathing in together for the E sound. E. And finally for the R, breathing in together. So just doing that final one more time, paying attention to the part that is doing the action and the part that is receiving the action. Breathing in. So the simple practice, if you were to take it into your life, could literally begin to make you an ecstatic human. And the key is because most of us, in that ego consciousness, the masculine consciousness has been the doer. So we have been identified with the one who is doing the breathing and the oohing and the ahhing. And so part of it is to become identified with that soft animal of the body that is receiving the ah and the ooh and the. Where does that live, and how can we tap into the consciousness of that? That's a part of it. And then the other part is allowing ourselves to actually be seen, right? Maybe you're in mid-conversation and the only way you can fully stay present and in your body is to and then when that happens, to allow yourself to be seen. To allow yourself to be seen in a way that gives permission to the other to be seen in their aliveness. And this is really the thing. This is really the thing that we're looking for, that we're so hungry for. And unfortunately, it has been covered under the shame. And so I want to give you one more piece. This is a really fun piece. If you have any decisions to make, if you have something that you're working with, maybe you're looking at, do I go this way or do I go this way? Do I buy this house or do I buy that house? Do I move to this state or do I move to that country? So if you have a choice, and it could be, do I have this for dinner or this for dinner? Go ahead and bring that to your awareness. Bring that to your awareness. So you have an A, assign one to an A, and assign one to a B. Okay, and we're going to do a different form of muscle testing. Because aliveness, and I'm talking to you about desire and the shame of desire, and this is all really the eroticism of life. So let's go ahead and just begin. Men and women, we can all do this together. Lift your pelvic floor. So it's like contracting your anus. Just lift it and then release it. Lift and release. Lift and release. Lift and release. Let's do that 3 more times. Lift, release. Lift, release. Locking that, lifting it up and releasing. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to just ask your body. You're going to ask the aliveness of your body, the strength of your root, where there is more energy with which choice. Okay, so we're going to just do this together. So let's go ahead and just choose option A. Is it in my highest good? Is it going to bring me most aliveness if I align with A? And then holding that A in consciousness, we're just going to lift the pelvic floor and drop it. Lift and drop, lift and drop, lift and drop, lift and drop. Okay. Cleansing breath. And now we're going to explore B. So is it in my highest good and the greatest aliveness for me to go with B? Let's go ahead and lift the pelvic floor and drop it. Lift and drop, lift and drop, lift and drop, lift and drop. And so whichever one lifted higher is where you are going to be sustained in your aliveness. And you're going to create more aliveness in the world. So if one of them, sometimes people will literally not even be able to lift their pelvic floor with one. And that's really telling, because that's the choice that will have you drinking gallons of caffeine to get through and burning you out and feeling exhausted. And then there's the choice that has just lift. And then that's the option that's going to just have so much aliveness carrying you through. So the key here, the key is that we get to learn. We get to learn from nature. We get to learn from nature. There are no animals. We are the only animals. We are the only animals that experience shame around our procreation act, that we have that shame. And we are the only animals that have been destroying our natural environment. Because that shame has so separated us from our belonging, from the experience of having the mother. It's the shame that has us living like we're a civilization without a mother. But we're not. We're not. And we actually can mother each other in ways that are so beyond just like the nurturing of doingness. Right? If you can just feel into what it's like when you're sitting on the cliffs by the ocean and the waves are crashing and you feel the water on your skin and you hear the birds flying and the waves are crashing and the sun and just the perfection of it all, and you feel this peace because it's just peace here because you're okay just as you are. You don't need to fix yourself. Same thing, you transport yourself in the middle of the desert, the vast desert, hot, dry, quiet, dusty. Same, you belong. You're okay. You don't need to fix yourself. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to correct your desires. Right? Same thing again. You transport yourself to a mountaintop and smell of the pine trees and the dry, crisp air, and your feet sinking into the dirt. And again, it's belonging. Because you're just okay as you are. And so we actually can give this to each other. We can give each other this level of permission, which is what I was describing in the strip club. This level of being seen in aliveness through just looking into somebody's eyes, just long enough to make them a little uncomfortable. And breathe, have a soft belly so you're not like all contracted. Soft belly, so you're connected to the soft animal of your body. And then don't go into shame. And don't make it mean anything. It doesn't mean we have to go sleep together. It just means we're alive. We're alive, and to be sharing in this aliveness, because in this aliveness, there's so much intelligence. There's so much wisdom. Our actions that come from this level of being seen and safety, really the key that we're looking for. It's, what Mary Oliver called the soft animal of our bodies. This is really what we're wanting to tap into. And so what I'm inviting you to do is to do the activating sounds, the 5 activating sounds. That was hum, ooh, ah, ee, and rrr. And the activating breath, which is do that. Do that when you're running. Do it when you're jogging. Do it when you're in yoga class, or you're practicing yoga at home, or if you're practicing qigong. It's so great to just bring this in, because your body is going to begin waking up. And if you also have in your consciousness that there is the one who's doing the humming and the one who's receiving the humming, you are going to become very aware of the soft animal of your body. And before you know it, you're going to actually be in partnership, and you're going to be able to literally source creative ideas from it. Yeah. So this is it. And if you have questions, I would love to be available. Be available for your questions.
Good old Daisy. She's always got a good question or two. Good. And then anybody else who wants to put, if you have a lot of people, just put it in the chat that you want a question. I'll call you out.
I have a question. So my question is that for people who's an empath and they're absorbing environment and people's energy very easily, like for instance, even like think about all the past relationship, and how would you be able to offer some technique, be able to like either cut the cord, or be able to step into full control of my own sovereign energy field?
Yeah, beautiful question. That is the thing, right? Coming into your sovereignty. So what I want to offer you is, if you can see all of your energy centers as having valves, right? So there's a valve at the heart, a valve at the solar plexus, the womb, the root, the throat, that you have valves in all of these energy centers, and that you are in charge of closing the valve or opening the valve. It doesn't need to always be completely open that everything just comes into you. So if you could practice that even right now, like if a part of you is feeling really open, if your heart's feeling really open, you can still feel like your heart is open without like taking everything into your field. So you could just kind of, with your mind's eye, just visualize, or even with your hand in the beginning, that you're closing the valve a little bit. Can you try it? How does it feel?
It feels more at home, I guess, like a little bit retrieving the animal back home. Feel more softer, not feel like struggling, trying to run away, and feel like running away from the weight of my body.
Yeah. And this, you know, Daisy, it's such a common thing for so many of the light workers to have a hard time like being in the body. And it's like this, I don't know, it's like it's not real. It's not real that it's not safe to be in the body. We just haven't been taught how to really create that safety. So I really just want to encourage you to keep on a regular embodiment practice. Do you have like a daily yoga practice or anything?
Like I do standing exercise, kind of like Tai Chi.
Okay, so start bringing the activating breath into some of what you're doing and into your day, because you just want to invite more of your spirit to be in your body. And the more grounded that you get, the easier all of this is going to get, so that you don't want to run away. And then the other piece that I would offer you is kind of like, if you were to just put your hands in front of you like this, and kind of just feel into how far are you extending your field right now? How far are you extending your field? And then just play with your consciousness, your awareness, if you want to like push it out. And if you want to like pull it in, you know? So when I go through the airport, I really pull it in, like, you know, I pull it all the way in. And if I'm being really vulnerable with someone and then all of a sudden I feel that they're really triggered and some stuff's coming up, I may actually like close some of those valves because I don't want to let it in. But the main thing I would offer you is just really adding embodiment, whatever it takes to like get fully earthbound and ground your light into your earthly body.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
What does Judy have to say? Does she have a question for you?
Here, let me see. I don't see anything written here.
I see Judy on screen and Abel. Why don't you guys go ahead? Lindsay, my daughter. Got a question for her, Lindsay?
Well, I appreciate your sharing with the closing of the energy field. And I would ask, when you're in an environment where you want to be more open and let people in, you're meeting new friends, do you open yourself up completely, or do you recommend being kind of half and half? Or what is you're entering into an environment where you're not 100% sure what will happen? A professional, maybe an interview or meeting new people.
Yeah. It's a moment to moment, you know, it's a moment to moment discernment. It's like really dancing with the space in between, then the space that lives between you and I, really like dancing with that in the moment. I may, you know, I mean, everything is always shifting. Everybody's got their own landmine in there. Everybody could get triggered